That was a slow one.
Yes. How do you like to draw? Do you like drawing with a lot of people around you, or?
No, I can't draw with anybody around me. That's why I'm not doing much drawing while I'm speaking to you. I've got my drawing board, but I haven't ever drawn with anybody else in the room at all, because large part of my work has been done when everybody's gone to bed.
Could you draw Sir Rupert now?
Preferably not, thank you.
How do you work? When you work, do you have the whole story in your mind before you start, or?
No. No, I often haven't any story. I base my story sometimes on just an unusual phrase, like the gooseberry fool.
What was the first story?
Rupert, Algy and the smugglers.
Did you feel that you were being successful then in the early years of Rupert?
Well, I felt that my first story was all right. It was the first story I'd ever written for anybody, you see. And that certainly pleased me. I hadn't realized I was an author. And,
in 1940, the Rupert Annual was selling something like 1.5 million copies. Did your salary increase in proportion?
Oh, no. Oh, no. But that wasn't what they sold them for.
Did it ever occur to you to go and ask for more money since it was being so successful?
In the war, no. Apart from anything else, I was only to have an art job, because there weren't many about. And publishing wasn't a very profitable thing in the war. They couldn't get the paper, except for Beaverbrook, who had his own pine forest out in Canada.
Has Rupert made you a wealthy man?
Certainly not. I should be in a larger place than I'm in if I were a wealthy man, I suppose, though I thoroughly enjoy being here.
Can I ask you, when they were selling 1.5 million copies in the 40s, can I ask you what your salary was then? I don't remember.
Yes, my salary was 1 guinea a drawing, 6 days and 12 guineas a week, see? And it was all right at that time. I got by. I was able to help support my people, and my season ticket to Waterloo wasn't much.
That continued through then? Till when? And you started?
It continued till 1949, when word got about that I'd been offered another job, you see, and this man, Stanley Marshall, got hold of the manager and said, we shan't find anybody like him to do Rupert. We have to change Rupert. We can't go on paying him 12 guineas a week. And so they put me up to quite a lot more, about 18 guineas a week. Something like that, and that's what it kept to the end.
I believe there was some point of disagreement over the cover of the 1973 annual.
There was a very strong disagreement.
What was it about?
Well, they put these items on Rupert. They took out the colour plain, and that's a heinous sin for anybody to do anything to an artist's original without his permission.
So it was, because normally Rupert is a white bear inside, but
inside,
he's
yes,
brown on the cover.
We've often had questions from children, how is it that he's brown on the cover? And white inside, and brown will become larger because if Mary Torter ever did a cover, she made it brown.
But so what you objected to was not the fact that you didn't like having a white Rupert on the cover, but that they'd interfered with your artwork after you'd done it.
Oh, absolutely. If I'd been in a trade union, I'd have prosecuted them. And I was strongly inclined to prosecute them for that, because they had no business to do it.
Do you feel, on the whole, that the Daily Express has treated you fairly over the years?
Well, they completely ignored me, so I think that's being treated fairly. They haven't complained about anything.
Where is your artwork now, all the artwork of 40 years?
I don't know.
You don't possess it yourself?
I wasn't allowed to keep a thing that had appeared in the morning paper. I was allowed to keep the originals of some of the end papers after 1950.
But you weren't allowed to keep any of your original artwork?
No.
From the papers?
No, I haven't.
So who has it now?
I'm afraid that's one of the real questions of life. We've no idea where they are.
Yeah, well, let me show you such of the Rupert artworks as we do have that Bestall did.
This is Bestall's artwork?
This is Bestall's stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, after, what, 40 years, look at it. That's it. That shelf.
Yeah.
And that's all that's left of Bestall's artwork.
I mean, what's happened to the rest?
Heaven knows. I really honestly don't know. It's just got lost over the years.
How many stores do you reckon are here?
Possibly a dozen. There are 3 here, which have never been used in annuals at all. Relatively recent still. You'll notice the frames are a slightly different size. Different size, different proportions.
And Bestall hasn't got the original, any other originals?
No, he hasn't. None of this at all. The only originals he has, as far as I know, are originals of his, some of his annual work, a few of his covers, a few of his end papers. And that's a mystery too. What happened to those? I mean, after all, the annual's been going since 1936.
What about the express file copies of the actual annuals? Are you...
Annuals?
Yes.
That's a very tender topic.
Really?
Because we don't have a complete set. Again, because that's it. Another virtually bare cover we don't have, and this is terrible, we don't have a complete set of Rupert annuals.
This is the Holy of Holies, where the...
Something like that, yeah.
Yes.
These, by the way, are paper-filled, because I always test the paper-filled features that appear in the annual personally.
But there's not a complete set of the old...
No,
books
anything
here,
but.
Just the odd ones.
In fact, you've picked a bad one. There's nothing inside there. I should have warned you about that.
They're not all blank.
No, they're not.
Bestall doesn't have any rights to Rupert himself.
No, none. No, he was... Rupert was the property of the Express. Bestall was brought in as an artist, simply to perpetuate it.
How do you think Bestall has come out of the whole thing? I mean, do you...
It's hard to say. He's a one-off character, Bestall. He really is. He's a man who... I can think of nobody like Bestall at all. And I think he's basically, I suppose, he's a very happy man. Happier than most.
I mean, do you think he made much money out of it?
I don't know what's much money. I really honestly don't know. I mean, in the sort of Disney type thing, no, of course he didn't, I imagine, make a great deal of money out of it, no. But he made a very comfortable living out of it, I imagine. And he seemed to be pretty comfortably off.
I was born in North Wales, in Colwyn Bay, actually, in the same town where Alfred Bestall went to school. And we moved down to the London suburbs here when I was about 5. And my dad worked in the bank in Surbiton here, just around the corner. And I spent most of my childhood looking back to North Wales and saying, I'm not English, I'm Welsh. And I think in a way sort of pining for North Wales and trying to pretend that the suburbs here didn't have any reality. And in a way, maybe that's what Alfred Bestall was doing when he sat in this house here, dreaming up the world of Nutwood, and sat at his kitchen table, drawing the adventures of Rupert. Alfred Bestall stopped doing the Daily Strip and the Express in 1964, after 30 years. But he continued to be responsible for the annuals up until 1974, although they had enough of his material in hand to last until 1977. And still, Rupert goes on. He's still big business. 200,000 copies every year. Maybe that's the problem. You see,
The people who write and draw Rupert now are all people of integrity and imagination, but I'm sure they'd be the first to admit they're not Bestalls. And I hate to say it, but for my money, the Rupert stories now are a pale shadow of what they were in Bestall's heyday. But then, Bestall was a genius. And that brings me to my final irony. Between 1936 and 1950, Bestall produced what, to my mind, are some of the greatest children's books of all time. No wonder they could sell 1.5 million copies in a year. And yet, unlike any other books of a comparable standing, say Wind in the Willows or Winnie the Pooh, Bestall's books have been out of print since the year they were first published.
Oh, it's a completely absorbing job. Well, after the first few years, I existed in Nutwood.
And do you feel you've been living in the real world or in a world of your own creation?
Oh, I have. I was 42 before I got Rupert, and I was in the extremely real world before that. A highly competitive world. I haven't been competitive since I've been in Rupert.
Was it, in a way, was it a form of retreat from the world?
In a way, yes. Yes, I think that's right.
Do you feel that dedicating your life to writing for children is a worthwhile thing?
I think so. If you have an idea what direction you want to lead them. Yes, I think I've been extremely fortunate.
Aren't we all in search of happiness? To each one it means a different thing. To some it's well, to some it's hell, to some it's only what love can bring. Please don't blame me if I'm human too. I'm the same as you and you and you. I'm a dreamer, aren't we all? Just a dream.